Hello and welcome to part 2 of Chapter 10, Legally Required Benefits. And my goal today is to cover crunch the numbers and workers' compensation. So let's get to our crunch the numbers. And in my book, it is on page 261, and we're going to be calculating FICA, OASDI, and Medicare taxes. So we want to look at these 4 individuals. So we've got Anna making $250,000, who is self-employed, Roberto, who is making $90,000 and who works for Johnson Manufacturing. Maria makes $120,000, also works for Johnson Manufacturing, and Jim, who makes $50,000 and is self-employed. So this gives us the different information here. So for FICA, the employer pays 7.65% and the employee pays 7.65% if you're actually working for an employer like Johnson Manufacturing. If you're self-employed, it is 15.3%, which is those two added together. For OASDI, it is 6.2% for the employer, 6.2% for the employee, and 12.4% if you're self-employed. And if you remember, we were talking about the wage base and how in 2020 the wage base is $137,700, but for our crunch the numbers and in the book for that year it's $128,400. And Medicare Part A, which you recall is required, it's compulsory, so that's why we're paying for it up front. So it's 1.45% of the taxable earnings of the individual, and so that's paid a little bit by the employer and the 1.45% by the employee. And if you're self-employed, it's the whole thing, so 2.9%. So 10-11 says, how much do the employer and employee pay in total for OASDI each monthly pay period? So let's go ahead and go on over to the spreadsheet here. And here we're going to be calculating total for the employer and the employee per month for old age, survivor, and disability insurance. Okay. So as you can see here, Anna makes more, she makes more than the wage base of $128,400. So because she makes more than that, that's all we're going to pay for OASDI. So it's $128,400 divided by 12 months because we're looking for monthly pay periods times the 12.4%. So the whole thing here because she is self-employed, okay? When we go to Roberto, on the other hand, he makes $90,000. That's below the wage base. So we calculate the whole thing, $90,000 divided by the 12 months to get to that monthly payment times the 6.2% of the employer and the 6.2% of the employee, or the 12.4% total. And that's how we come up with this $930, okay? Then it also asks for how much do the employer and employee pay for Medicare each monthly pay period. So this is still 10-11. We're going into Medicare now. So here's our Medicare information. Medicare doesn't worry about the wage base. So for Medicare, you make $250,000 divided by the 12 months to get to that monthly payment times the 2.9%, again, because she is self-employed. And that is $604.17. Okay. Roberto, again, $90,000, so his total wage divided by 12 months times 1.45 plus 1.45, which is still that 2.9%. And that's how we come up with $217.50. So you can see for Maria making $120,000, how to calculate that, 50,000, just same thing, 50,000 divided by 12 times 2.9%. Okay. Now 10-12 says how much does the employer pay in total for OASDI each monthly pay period. So now the employer, okay, it's just all we're going to calculate is the employer part. So Anna is self-employed. So she is the employer and the employee. So it is going to be the same as it was up here in 10-11, okay? Because she's self-employed, she's still going to pay that full 12.4%. Now, let's look at Roberto, on the other hand, works for Johnson Manufacturing. And because he does, the employer is half of the total that we calculated up here in 9-11. So now we're just going to divide that by 2. So they are only paying, Johnson Manufacturing is only paying 6.2%. So that's where we come up with the $465. Then 10-13 says if a taxable wage base were to increase to $135,000, how much do the employer and employee pay in total for OASDI each monthly pay period? So now we're saying this wage base, okay, is increasing to $135,000. So really the only person that that's going to affect is Anna, because she makes more than that wage base. So for OASDI, right, now it's going to be $135,000 divided by 12 times the 12.4% to get to $1,395. And that's slightly more than up here, which you would expect, okay? So just to recap, okay, FICA is the whole, is all the OASDI plus Medicare Part A. So 6.2% plus 1.45% equals the 7.65. So when you see that in your paycheck, that's what is being taken out, okay? And it makes a difference if you're self-employed or if you work for an employer. This is how much comes out of your paycheck, and this is what the employer is paying. What else? I think that's about it. Okay, so now let's go back to our slides and let's talk just for a second about workers' compensation. So workers' compensation is when an employee gets hurt at work. Hurt at work. And it doesn't matter whose fault it is, doesn't matter what happened. Somebody gets hurt at work, any kind of hurt, they're going to, you need to report that. This is really important, okay? So there are 6 bullets that your book has, but I think you can condense it down into 3 basic principles. So the first is it is focused on prevention. Okay, workers' compensation, the way that it's paid, and again, these are state-run. All of these are state-run workers' compensation insurance programs. And the way that you fund it is if you have a lot of accidents, you're going to pay a lot more in insurance. So it's really just like your car insurance, right? So if you have accidents, your insurance goes up. Same with workers' compensation. So we're going to focus on prevention. The second thing is if something happens, you just need to take care of your employee and not blame anybody, right? It's not about whose fault it was. It's not, don't worry about those things, because in the end, you're going to go back to bullet number 1, which is the prevention. So if something's happening, you need to look at it and take a good hard look and make sure that your processes and procedures are in place to make sure that your employees are healthy and are not getting injured on the job. But in the end, bullet number 2 is just take care of your people. Don't worry about blame. Okay. And then the third reason to have workers' compensation that is no blame is to reduce a lot of the administrative burdens, right? So let's not worry about bringing lawyers into the picture and dealing with all of those things, okay? We just need to make it simple, fast, take care of your people, get it done. All right. And explain disability under Social Security versus disability under workers' compensation. So Social Security is under the social programs, the OASDI, and so in that particular case, that disability kicks in if you are totally disabled, meaning that you can't do work at all. And it doesn't matter where you were injured. You could have been injured in the McDonald's parking lot, but if you are permanently disabled, you are unable to work, then disability under OASDI will eventually kick in. Okay, under workers' compensation, that could be a partial disability as well as complete disability. So it could be temporary or permanent disability, and it has to happen at work. Whatever the injury was, it had to have happened at work. Okay, so that's one or two big differences: the permanent disability versus partial disability, and the you can be injured anywhere versus being injured at work. Another thing is that at workers' compensation, you get paid pretty immediately. Okay, they want you to go to the doctor, they want you to go to the hospital, they want you to take care of whatever it is. And so you can start probably getting payments in like just a few days. Whereas Social Security disability, that can take up to 5 months to get those benefits paid. Both of them are going to pay for training and rehabilitation. Both of them will pay survivor benefits. So there are some similarities there, but disability is different between the Social Security disability benefits and the workers' compensation. All right, stay tuned for the next installment in Chapter 10, and we will talk about Family Medical Leave Act and some health care. So stay tuned.